so we kept on going, and went all the way through Germany. I don't know, we went over the rivers on pontoons, and I remember how scared we were about the first 81st Field Artillery. You cross the platoons with the water, you know, shaking like this. You try that sometime, driving through it, and then staying on it so you don't fall beside it. And then the German planes come and trying to bomb you, and then we had had the infantry. You know, they were up in the hills and stuff, shooting at us as we went across, and so if we all made it, we were very fortunate, and all that kind of thing. I don't know. I've got a lot written down about the different wars, the different places. I can't necessarily remember it all, but then I think last time when we were talking about it, the Russian forces. This is the end of the war, and the politicians took and they divided up the area, made it East Germany, West Germany, all that kind of thing. And so we were way over there by Berlin, right, Czechoslovakia to the right of us, and we had to, and we had to begin to move back. And let me tell you the difference between the American Army and the Russian Army. Of course, in the American Army, we never went to occupy anything. We always went to liberate, and that's all we did. And that certainly helped me when I thought of a Christian in the military. You know, well, are we there? Are we there because of the right thing? Well, we always went to liberate, never occupy anybody, never did. When we had the Marshall Plan, we fed our enemy. We did the same thing in a little way right after the war, but the Russians came in. You see, the Russians, and you couldn't blame them, they wanted revenge. Now, that's the difference between the American Army and the German Army. And, you know, you can't blame them. You can't blame them for the revenge, because I have seen what they did to their own prisoners of the Russian Army and the Germans. Treated them terribly and everything else. We saw that, and in fact, when I was over in Ukraine, this is where the German army came in against Russia in the Ukraine, all the way through there. So we saw all the results, and even over, wasn't too far from Stalingrad, I guess, there was a bunch of Russians. And the Russians had to, and I went up the Dnieper River. It's a big river. It goes all the way from the south of Ukraine way up through past Moscow. And the Russians, trying to get away from the Germans, it was midwinter, ice cold, but the Dnieper River was still running, hadn't frozen over. Those Russians trying to get away from the Germans, they took off all their clothes to swim across the Dnieper River in that ice, trying to hold, they couldn't have their clothes on, trying to hold their clothes up on top so they didn't get wet, which they did, but it was certain death. And if they became prisoners of the Germans, they were going to shoot them too. So what could they do? They were dead no matter how they did it. So that, you know, the Russians that were captured by the Germans too, they wanted revenge, and so they did. Just like a German woman that I saved her life from a Russian who was very angry and trying to get revenge. But Eisenhower, of course, our general, said no revenge. Be humble in victory always, and respect the Germans and help much as you can, what we can do. And so we did that. And the Russians came, and we backed up right after the war, and they kept moving in, and they would steal, you know, and they would treat the Germans to revenge again. We didn't have that. We helped the German civilians. We did what we can. Even we trucked some of their stuff for them, and that type of thing. And we'd feed them. We would give them food, and all that type of thing. Something that the Russian army would not do. So I've always said I'm real grateful for the fact that I was in the American military. Always thankful. I always saw the difference between the American military and all the rest of them. You know, I'm not saying some of them were good and all the rest of them, but overall, that's the way it was. And the thing about it, when we occupied those areas, you know, we had to be the attorney, we had to be the judge, we had to be the jury, we had to be the courts, we had to be everything. You know, what we did determined what would happen. Just like that German gal, you know, and that Russian that was beating her up, wanted to kill her, he had a sack of flour. And he was hungry, you know, so I allowed him to keep a sack of flour because of that. So, you know, we had to determine what we were going to do at a given time, always. So, if you had mercy and justice and all the rest of it, makes a world of difference. In fact, it's scriptural. And America, the values and the morals of America. So, you know, I don't know. I'm just talking a little bit, and that's the way I feel. That's the way I feel about the American military. And I hope we can always be, you know, an army of caring about people and never having hatred. I can't say that I ever had hatred in my heart for the enemy as we were fighting. You know, how can you justify killing and still say, love your neighbor as yourself, love your enemy, pray for your enemy, you know? But I've discovered how possible it is with my experiences, which I'm not even talking about right now. So, I don't know. What do you want to know? What do you want to know?
What did you do for entertainment or fun during the down times?
What we did?
Yeah.
Oh man, we just got the news. The army had a periodical, and I faithfully read that thing, laying in my little
Trying
cot,
to figure out what was going on.
Cot, yeah, so we could see what was going on. Because a lot of things, right in the army, when you're in the midst of, you can't see what's over the other side, what they're doing there, you know. It's just what you are, protecting your guys and trying to stay alive and winning that next point over there. And so we read about it, and it was interesting to see some of the things that we never witnessed, but now after seeing and reading about it, then it began to, you know, we begin to understand what happened. So, that's what we did.
Stars and Stripes?
The Stars and Stripes. Yep. How did you know that, Carol?
I'm smart.
Yeah, the Stars and Stripes. Well, that was my Bible. Next to my Testament. Where's my Testament? Well, I guess it's upstairs. I still got it. My green little Testament that I had with me. You know, it's a little beat up, and it's torn, but most of it's still there.